So here we are in my lobby, and as you can see the arrangement is from the lobby door you go round, there's the window which didn't used to be here because this used to be an open balcony, and the front door at the far end of the lobby, the alcove where the rack used to be for the rubbish here, the bathroom window above it, mine's been painted over now, but as you can see, as you know, will appear later on, no vents, and the electricity meter door here, which is bad, not good. So that's how these flats are arranged. Some of the flats are arranged slightly differently because this is a mixture of 4-bedroom and 2-bedroom. Some flats don't have a bathroom window, but the principle otherwise is the same: window, door, door, door. And now, stand back. I'm going to come out the front door and let it slam. If it does it, okay? Just say go and I'll shut the door and then open it again.
Okay.
Okay? Now the lobby door, I'll do the same thing.
I do, alright.
Okay. Ready?
Yeah.
This is what the first letter we got from the council said. Dear customer, Fire Door Replacement Southern Court. We will be carrying out the following improvement works to your block of flats: replacing meter cupboard doors, replacing flat doors, replacing lobby entrance doors. Our contractor, Stoke, are hoping to start work on 1st of June. Some of the work will be carried out inside your flat, so Stoke will contact you to make an appointment that is convenient to you. Before work begins to replace your flat door, please make sure that you have removed any personal door furniture. The new entrance doors that we are fitting have a 30-minute fire rating, which allows us to meet our fire safety requirements. Then there's a bit more about people who have already fitted their own doors anyway. While we are carrying out these improvement works in your block of flats, you may experience some noise or inconvenience. Yours faithfully, Andrew Treek, Property Investment Manager. That's it. Me and Graham bumped into each other on the road just outside the block, and we started talking about the doors, and what seemed obvious to us already is that we were going to be walked all over by the council. And Graham at one point said, we've got to do something about this. At which point we came straight back up to here, and Graham sat where I'm sitting now, and I sat over there by my laptop, and we started writing our first letter, and it all began with that.
On the day that they came, the first day that they came onto the site, we saw the state of the doors, or if you could call them doors, they were just blanks that they had rehashed to make it look like a door. So they come in a straightforward plywood door shape, and they put the fittings onto the door. They put the handle on, they put the hole in the door for the spy hole. With the lobby door they put the window in, and they were totally unfinished. It was just blank wood, just plywood. And we said to them, are these going to be finished? Will they be painted, or will they be varnished? And they said, no, this is exactly how they're going to be. And we looked at them and we said, no, we're not having those. So we turned them away. And the next thing, we had to have a visit from Stoke, who were doing the job. And a guy named Fallon came from Stoke, and David Lysett from the council. And they said, what's the problem? And we said, we weren't informed what kind of doors they were going to be, and these are no kind of replacement for the doors we've got, because our doors are far better than this. So the guy Fallon said to us, well, we've got the workforce here. What can we do? And we agreed to let them do the lobby door. We wouldn't have the front doors, but we agreed they could do the lobby doors after a little bit of consultation, because the old lobby door that we had 3 glass panels, and the 3 glass panels let light into the lobby, so if you came in at night you could see because they were lit. With this new door they intended to put on, it had only got 1 small glass panel at the top, and that was too dark. It made the lobby completely dark. So the guy Fallon said, we'll put you in a light into your lobby so that you'll be able to see. And we said, okay, on that basis we would accept the lobby door. But it was obvious that they'd made no attempt to figure out what they were going to do, because they hadn't taken that into consideration, how dark it would be. And the guy Treek, who was the assets manager, he said he'd never even been here. He'd never seen the doors.
When Andrew Treek saw our front doors, it was for the first time. And we know that because the first words virtually that came out of his mouth, he looked at my front door and he said, "Oh, this is a beveled door. You can't have beveled doors. They're supposed to be plain." And what was it? He'd never seen it before. How can he be, sort of organise this whole programme without actually knowing what the hell he's talking about? And it was quite clear he didn't.
Pretty well everybody noticed that the new doors were nothing like the quality of the old doors. In fact, they looked nothing like what anyone would expect of doors which were meant to be fitted to people's homes.
One of the first things we did was to get a petition together. It wasn't a big petition because we could only talk to so many residents. We mainly spoke to people in Southern Court here and Penkhull Court over the way. But what we got was almost everybody we talked to signing the petition. And it was an outright refusal. Part of the petition actually says, having expressed criticism of the door itself and of the fact that we weren't consulted, on that understanding, we, the undersigned, will be refusing access to the contractors who wish to carry out the work you have outlined in your letter until we've had proper consultation with all the relevant council departments and the police, and have reassured ourselves that any changes made to our homes will meet the standards of security which are a basic requirement of civilised living and our right. And so many people signed that off. Nobody wanted these doors.
The next thing that we did was attend 2 public meetings. There were 2 public meetings held at the town hall in Stoke, and about 60 or 70 people attended over the periods. The meetings were chaired by Randolph Conte, who was a councillor, independent councillor at the time. But what we found out was that he was also an executive for Kia Stoke. So his impartiality was nil. He was totally for the council. And everything we brought up, every problem or what we saw as problems, we brought up, he dismissed. He didn't even let us speak. It was the panel that was sitting there from the council that did all the talking virtually. And they were telling us how good these doors were. And Andrew Treek had one sawn in half to show it was a solid door. And he banged on it and said, "Look, this is a good solid door. There's nothing wrong with this. Better than what you've got. It's fire retardant, etc., etc." And also, he wouldn't take any criticism. And also, there was a fire officer there, Will Gascoigne, and he wouldn't take any criticism either. He said, "I'm a fire officer, I know what I'm doing. These are FD30 fire doors and they will do the job." I think it was the second meeting, I saw Andrew Treek in the lobby as we were leaving. And he came up to me and he said, "Mr. Barrett," he said, "no matter what happens, you'll be all right." Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. As if he was bribing me to say I'd be all right. I'd get a good door no matter what. When we actually saw the doors in close-up at the meetings, it was obvious that they weren't going to do the job properly. They were just plywood with, they called, an interior that was fire retardant. We later found out it was like egg boxes inside the door, but it wasn't the one that we were shown on the meeting. The meeting, it was a solid door. We later found out there was two different kinds of door, one from a company called Prem Door and one from a company called Geldwin. So there were two kinds of doors. And the meetings ended with no satisfactory conclusion at all. So they carried on doing the work, and some of us refused still. So some people were accepting and some people were refusing.
The basic problem with all of this is that this wasn't any ordinary council scheme. It wasn't done as it would have been done in the old days by a council employing its direct labour force to come in and do the work on behalf of the council. And that's all done because you know that the money that's budgeted for the thing is going towards the scheme. This is a consequence of there being a joint venture arrangement between the council and Kia, forming a fresh company called Kia Stoke, which is a profit-making organisation. So the council are arranging to do a programme in conjunction with a company who is after profit. The council gets 19% of whatever that profit is. I mean, the scope for financial finagling is huge, as I think everything else we've got to say kind of demonstrates. When the doors came on site, we were appalled to see how they were being treated. The council put up a cabin, like a container, outside Penkhole, and they stored the doors in there, a closed-off container. Yeah. Then when they brought them out, it was not very good weather. It was very damp and drizzly. But that didn't matter. They took the doors out, already unwrapped, which they shouldn't be by law, and leaned them up against the cabin before dragging them into the buildings. Leaned them up against the cabin for hours on end in damp weather. You can't do that. That was completely against the rules.
And like I said before, the workers had said, we are chippies, we know how to fit doors, but we haven't been trained to fit fire doors. Then we watched the doors being fitted. I'll read you what we saw. The old doors and frames were ripped away from the walls. The new frames were built up from kits made up of knotty, thinly dipped timbers. Frames which didn't fit the apertures they were adjusted on the site. They were often spaces between the joints of the frame. The doors were the cheapest type of office door, which had been fitted out with weak, easily damaged handles, insecure locks. They had been thinly dipped rather than properly varnished. Many of them did not fit the frames. They were trimmed on site, often outside in damp weather on damp grass. The trimming was variable, and many of these doors lost some of their trim both on the side and on the top. Some of the doors came with no top edging at all. We afterwards found doors which had no certification whatsoever. Many of the doors did not fit properly, even after the trimming, and they were left loose in the framework. The top closers were poorly fitted. Most lost their adjustment very quickly, resulting in chronically slamming doors. Some sprang oil leaks. In the case of the lobby doors, the surrounds which divided the frame from the wall were built up from blocks of bare timber, cut on site, and then covered with fire-resistant board. The board was not always accurately fitted, and the resulting gaps were roughly filled with mastic. While some of the surrounds were filled with fire-resistant foam, many were not, so that they were left hollow. Almost none of the lobby door frames quite reached the floor. Quick-drying cement was shoved roughly underneath them, but in most cases that made no difference.
Throughout all our years of correspondence with the council, and a right old roundabout that has been, there are three particular items which I think are of major interest here. When we asked for how this thing was costed out, we got a letter from Daniel Lysett, who puts himself down as Assistant Programme Officer, whatever that means. And he gives us a series of figures. Thank you for the letter you sent requesting information with regards to burn tests and upgrading of fire doors. One of the things which I'll be mentioning in a minute is that we asked if the doors had been burn tested, which is a legal requirement. I am slightly confused when you refer to the cost of carrying out a burn test and upgrading the doors. This is the bloke who's in charge. In the meeting on the 21st of July, myself and Councillor Conte explained the rationale of replacing all fire doors for new compared to upgrading the current doors. We did not talk about carrying out burn tests on existing doors. That's an admission they never tested our doors that they were planning to replace. Never found out whether or not they were fireproof. Didn't bother. Then he goes through the whole lot of costing. And then he writes, and I don't understand this at all. It would appear the council is spending a further £250,000 across the 10 blocks. This equates to an extra £170 per door. For the extra £170, the council is purchasing new doors that all meet the Fire Safety Reform Order 2005 and increasing the life cycle of these components to at least 30 years, dependent on how well they are looked after. Furthermore, the council have taken into consideration the amount of time it takes to carry out such remedial works to existing doors against the time it takes to install a new door set. The door sets come pre-hung, so much of the time taken removing the old door set and frame. I hope this answers your questions in the letter I received. What's he saying? We decided not to get pre-hung doors, but to fit the doors together and the frames, build them on site, because that's cheaper than getting pre-hung doors. And then he says, but we're giving you pre-hung doors. In one breath. Then we got this letter from Rachel Forster about the certification. I'm afraid I have to read all of this, because this is... We asked about the certification, and what seemed apparent to us is that a lot of the doors didn't have the correct certification. And I'm going to try to read this out without laughing. Rachel Forster, one of the managers of the scheme, wrote to us. And she said, the FD30 doors have been provided with all the certification for the doors and hardware door furniture and comply with the British standards and recommended guidance documents to satisfy the requirements of fire safety legislation. They have been third-party accredited by an independent assessor and approved by the Fire Safety Manager of Staffordshire Fire and Rescue Service. Keir have contacted Geldwin and provided me with the following information. The doors are manufactured with a small silver certificate barcode on the top edge of the door. This is used to provide confirmation of the manufacturer and fire rating. It is not a legal requirement to have this barcode on the door. Kia have a full audit trail of the doors, when they were purchased and who purchased them. Geldwin confirmed that the audit trail meets their requirements. Whilst the literature suggests the doors are not trimmed at the top, this is only so that the small silver certificate barcode is retained. However, the standard tolerance to trim a door is between 4 to 6 millimetres. This can be trimmed from all edges, including the top. The particular style of the flat entrance doors are designed to have 2 edging strips on each side, but do not have a top or bottom edging strip. This has not been removed because it never existed due to the style design of the door. Therefore, this has not increased the risk of the door swelling or warping. The doors have been fitted to the frames within the tolerances and have not been trimmed above the manufacturer's requirements. This has therefore not affected the structural integrity of the door. The Geldwin Comprehensive Guide to Installing Doors states that when fitting the intumescent strips on the FD30 door, they should be fitted all round the heads and jambs of the frames, unbroken except at the ironmongery positions, hinges and latches. There is no legal requirement for any company fitting fire doors to be accredited by the British Woodworking Federation, as long as they are working within the specified tolerances, 4 to 6 centimetres of trimming. This only becomes a requirement, for example, when an aperture is cut out of the door, not including the letter plate. God Almighty. Apart from some of it being gibberish, she tells lies. It is an absolute legal requirement to have this barcode on the door. When she said it isn't, it is absolute legal requirement, and that is what Geldwin have told us themselves. They've been third-party accredited by an independent assessor. She's never said who that assessor is, and approved by the Fire Safety Manager of Staffordshire and Fire Rescue Service. Absolutely no evidence at all that they've done more than just look at the paperwork. Have they actually come to look at the doors? We don't think they did until a lot later on in the process. She's actually admitted that doors have come without edging. The doors are legally required to have edging. These doors, this kind of door. And it's hard to... And she says that they don't need to have the work done to be accredited by the British Woodworking Federation so long as they're working within specified tolerances. We understand that the workers who fit these doors have got to be accredited with the British Woodworking Federation, never mind what kind of doors they're fitting. So this is a lie. And she also says this only becomes a requirement, for example, when an aperture is cut out of the door, not including the letter plate. Okay, what did they do to our doors? They fitted locks. They fitted a window. They fitted hinges. They cut aperture out of the door, the window. And she's saying, doesn't matter. I just don't know what to make of any of that.
We actually wanted to know why they hadn't employed a proper door replacement company to do these doors, because obviously it was a big project, because there's 10 blocks of flats in the city. And we got no explanation from this. They just said that it was an ongoing maintenance and repair program. We thought it should have been done by a proper company. We had the MP's assistant come and look at the doors, and he agreed with us. He said that the quality of the work that was going on was not up to scratch. He looked at the doors and said, you know, I expect a better job than this.
From Tony Oakman, who's the overall manager of the whole thing, we asked, of course, if a proper burn tests had been done as the legal requirement. What he wrote to Tristram Hunt in response to an inquiry that Tristram Hunt, MP at the time, inquired of him. Burn tests have been conducted on the proposed new doors by the manufacturers. These doors are sold as 30-minute fire retardant doors and are manufactured to exacting standards to ensure compliance. The burn tests referred to here are the standard burn tests carried out in laboratory conditions on sample doors as part of the manufacturing process. No such tests were carried out on a sample of the doors provided for the replacement programme after they had been modified by the subcontractors. Nor do these tests have any relevance for the fire safety or otherwise of the frames and surrounds. This comment is therefore irrelevant. We mucked about with the doors, couldn't be asked to find out if the work we did stood up. That's what he's saying.
We'd also contacted the media in Stoke-on-Trent. That was radio, television and local press. And they'd all given us favourable comments saying that they thought we had a case. And the MP was also backing us at the time, but he would only go so far. You know, he would say, you know, this should have been done properly by a proper company. But he wouldn't give us any assistance further than that.
We did a second petition. And we got, again, we could only canvass Southern Court and Penkhull and Dibden, the three of the blocks on this estate, the main 3 blocks on this estate. And we got a lot of signatures just from the 3 blocks in the space of a day. And this is what we say. Dear Mr. Oakman, we, the undersigned, have received your letter of the 9th of May 2012 in which you say the council may take legal action against those of us who continue to refuse to have new flat doors fitted. We do not understand why you wish to threaten law-abiding citizens whose sole concern is to reassure themselves that they are safe and secure in their own homes. As you have been told before, we are not opposed to the door replacement programme in principle, but we are very much opposed to the doors which the council has selected as replacement doors. The council claims that the doors meet proper standards of fire safety and security, but we feel very strongly that it has failed to prove its claims and has done nothing to lessen our worries about these doors. Every resident got a communication from the council, which we believe was written by Will Gascoigne, whom Graham has already talked to you about, the fire safety officer at the time, and he talks about all the reasons why the doors needed to be replaced. Concerning fire safety, but then he gets to this. I am a tenant. Can I refuse to have my flat door replaced? If you refuse access, then you will be breaching the terms and conditions of the tenancy agreement, and this may lead to us taking legal action against you. The only legal action that they could possibly threaten was eviction. And we already knew by then that they could not evict people on the basis of refusing front doors, but this is what they threatened residents with, and you can understand why a lot of residents believed them. It got worse than that, because another thing they did was to actually, they started by doing this outside Penkhull, and it fell flat on its face. Mr. Treek and council workers stood with a clipboard outside the flat entrance, and anybody who went in or out, they asked if they were residents there. Yes. Have you signed in to have a new front door? Will you accept a new front door? Will you make an appointment now to have a new front door? Confronting them outside the block as they're going in and out. Some people were bound to say yes, which the council knew, but enough people basically told him where to get off. They changed their tactic. They would knock on people's doors, a council official and the workforce, and say, we have come to fit your new front door. If we can't do it now, when can we do it? And obviously by that time, people just took it for granted that nobody was going to take any notice of the petition, and they might be evicted if they refused. So they signed for the new front doors. They didn't want them, but they took them. Pure intimidation. We managed to get quite a lot of media coverage for this, the local press and the BBC, local news, radio and television. And as a consequence of the sort of outcry we provoked, the council agreed to have an independent review done of the doors. And they hired a company called BRE Global, British Research Establishment Global. And they came and they inspected 66 of the doors over the whole 10 blocks, which is a fair cross-section, I think. And they wrote a lengthy report and they came to a conclusion. And this is BRE's independent assessment of the council's door replacement programme. Conclusion. Due to the high level of defects found during the site inspection, it is not possible to conclude that the installed door sets will meet the required fire resistance of 30 minutes when tested to BS 476, Part 22, 1987. This is compounded by the lack of certainty regarding what items have been used in specific areas of the project against that specified. There is also a lack of information relating to items used in most of the blocks. There are some significant findings from the inspection relating to the foyer doors installed into the following blocks: Forest, Boundary, Southern, Brookfield, Robinson, Penkhull, Dibden. These fire doors have been installed into partitions which should be 30-minute fire rated but have been incorrectly built. The use of 9mm plasterboard and lack of framework means that these partitions will not meet the requirements of a 30-minute fire-resistant partition to BS 476 Part 20. Additionally, the installation of the frames into these partitions is not to specification. What they're saying is the whole thing's wrong. The council's response was to bring in Dave Hilton, supposedly an expert on such matters. And his brief was basically to put things right. Okay. We spoke to him about this. So far as he could see, only 5 doors, on our block anyway, needed to be worked on. Didn't need to bother with the rest. And that basically consisted of what's called snagging. In other words, taking minor points of repair and repairing them.
After the BRE report, Dave Hilton decided to take so many of the workers that had already been doing the job and train them up to woodworking federation standards to fit the doors. They'd never done this in the first place. They'd just used ordinary chippies from their workforce. He said he'd trained them up to 6 weeks and they were now trained to fit these doors properly. But all he seemed to do was a little bit of tampering with what was already done. He said there were 5 doors that needed some work doing to them, but all he seemed to do is take the facade off and fill it with sawdust and bits of wood, anything they could find to fill the gaps in underneath the frame area. And once that was done, they moved on. So they did very little to actually change the work that was previously done.
He did nothing. Nothing was done to respond to the major points of the BRE report, which is that everything was wrong. And that was the whole response to the BRE report, which was absolutely damning of the whole programme. There should have been a completely new door replacement programme. The council simply avoided it by saying, we'll do a bit of this, do a bit of that. And of course it didn't work. Since then, the council are supposed to carry out regular checks of the state of the doors. Their checks consist of blokes working for the council whom we call red shirts. They're estate workers, walking around and basically opening doors and closing them. They have a look, come into the lobbies, have a look around, and then go away. That's it. That's the extent of the council's inspection of the doors. I remember two incidents when we met with Dave Hilton. I was very angry throughout our meetings because the bloke was trying to brush us off. And at one point he said to us, look, he said, in the old days, when your lobbies were open, that is to say there was no windows in the lobbies, they were just open balconies, your doors were legal. But now that the lobbies are enclosed, they're illegal. So I went to the window and I opened it. I said, right, legal, illegal, legal, illegal. And for the first time that day, there was complete silence from him. He didn't know what to say. The other one was when he started talking about how basically he was a competent, we were questioning his competence. And I said, no, this is just bodged work. You're just bodging. And he said, I'm insulted that you should dare suggest such a thing. So I said, open that window. And either Graham or Mr. Hilton opened the window. I said, right, now watch. I opened the lobby door and I let it go. And it slammed with a huge bang. Huge bang, which is what so many of the doors do. When the windows are open, the doors will slam. I said, bodged. And again, a second period of silence where he just didn't know what to say. And I think if he was competent, he'd have been able to answer both those points, but he had no answer to them.
Everyone that was still refusing the doors, they would get a letter about every 2 or 3 weeks. And it'd just be slipped through your door, not sent in the post or anything, just slipped through the door, saying that we note that you haven't had your doors replaced. Would you contact us and make an appointment? And I think over the time period, we'd each got about 100 of these letters because they would come every couple of weeks. And we had 100 of these letters saying exactly the same thing and no contact in between whatsoever.
This is what the letter says. Dear Mr. Snell, Fire Door Remedial Programme. It has come to our attention that Stoke have not been able to renew your flat entrance door as part of the Fire Door Remedial Programme. The Fire Door Remedial Programme has been undertaken to ensure that the City Council is compliant with the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order 2005 and that it fulfils its obligations as the landlord and freeholder of the City's council housing stock. The City Council has a legal obligation to ensure that fire doors are installed, to ensure that we meet the relevant fire regulations and to keep you safe in your home. Your current flat entrance door does not meet the relevant fire regulation standards and the installation of the fire doors is viewed by the City Council as essential. You will not be charged for this work. Please can you contact Rachel Forster on a phone number or Sharon Bettany on a phone number to arrange a convenient date and time for the fire door to be installed. No threat there then. The implication is that the work is essential and must be done under any circumstances, and then they just merely ask if we can make a date. So the threat of eviction has gone. What we did was ignore the letter completely and just let the copies come through our doors, and that's where it stood up to 2017. But then Grenfell Tower happened in June of 2017, wasn't it? Don't need to go through what happened on that day again. The council's response was quite incredible. They sent out a press release in immediate response what they were going to do in response to Grenfell Tower. And contained in the press release was this section here. In fact, it was released to the press before it was released to the residents through letters and before we knew about it. They talk about the planned improvements they're going to make, which they claim have been in development since January 2017. The programme of improvements builds on the Council's commitment to ensure its properties are fully safety compliant and exceed current fire safety regulations. I would like to take this opportunity to advise you that the planned improvements will include sprinkler systems installed in all council high-rise tower blocks and continuing the installation of sprinkler systems in council sheltered housing schemes, continuing with the installation of enhanced fire alarm systems in all high-rise and sheltered housing blocks, an annual independent fire safety assessment of all high-rise blocks in addition to the fire risk assessments the council already undertake, installation of CCTV in all high-rise blocks to help increase safety and act as a deterrent to antisocial behaviour. Continuing to work through the necessary legal channels with regards to a small number of residents who have not allowed the council to fit appropriate fire doors to their property. Continuing to work closely with Staffordshire Fire and Rescue Service to start a round of roadshows to inform and support residents. Did you notice that? Did you notice where they've slipped in the bit where the only section of this which refers to the doors is telling the world that they're going to act against us four who refused the old doors? That is the entirety of their response to the problem that Grenfell Tower very likely represented in terms of the suitability of their fire doors. They were going to take us to court.
So, in the end, because of our refusal, we got letters, 4 of us got letters, myself, Richard Snell, Christopher Mayo, and another chap in the building. We got a letter saying that they would take us to court if we didn't agree to have the doors. So a date was set and we went to court. It was very disorganised on behalf of the council. They've got 4 people with them. Dave Hilton, who's supposed to be the expert on door replacement, and 3 members of the council that we dealt with over the time that this was going on.
I couldn't make the warrant application hearing at North Staffordshire Justice Centre, as they now call courts, for health reasons, but I put in a written statement which I understand was given, which was read by the magistrates, and which I'm given to understand influenced their final decision not to grant the council what the council wanted. This is quite a long letter, but it contains the whole of our case against the council from the very beginning. This is my response to the notice served on me by Rebecca Williams, Housing Asset Enforcement Officer for Stoke-on-Trent City Council, on 30th of August 2017. I have asked that it be read out in court as I am unable to be present at this hearing. I have refused to have a new front door fitted to my flat according to the council's requirements for a very specific reason. It is my strongly held opinion, based on my and others' observations, that the door replacement programme which the council undertook in its tower blocks from 2011 onwards was severely mismanaged. I am aware that the council claims their work as essential. While I dispute that, my case being that the work was in fact discretionary and that no law would have been broken had it not been done, I will not argue that point here. But I also read in the notice that according to the council, my property is dangerous and prejudicial to my health and the health of others. I believe this to be true. However, I contend that it is not because of the well-made front door I currently have, but because of the substandard lobby door and electrical cupboard door the council have fitted as part of their 2011 programme. The council has much documentation demonstrating that the work they have carried out so far on other flats and wish to carry out on my flat is legal and has been carried out according to regulation. I, however, would point the court towards the doors themselves and the material condition of those doors. First, the doors are not standard domestic doors satisfying all the legal requirements of such doors as guaranteed by a reputable specialist supplier. They are reconstituted office doors subject in their current environment to warping, swelling and shrinkage. Second, they have been thinly dipped rather than fully varnished, so that they are easily scratched in such a way as to reveal bare timber beneath. Thirdly, there is a significant gap between the bottoms of the doors and the floor, creating very noticeable drafts. Fourthly, the door frames are made from cheap knotty wood and do not in most cases even reach the ground, despite the rough concrete that was shoved underneath them after they had been fitted. Fifthly, the top closers are frequently ineffective, leaving doors to slam very hard and loudly. Sixthly, many front doors are too heavy for their hinges and have to be manoeuvred into position before the catch will take. And seventhly, the maintenance programme which the council has had to institute to keep the doors functioning has on occasion created even more damage than was there before. Given all this, there can be no guarantee that these doors are fire safe to the extent that the council says they are. In this context, the term FD30 means nothing. Indeed, no private householder would accept work like this from any firm they have employed to refurbish their homes. They would certainly have grounds to sue. I therefore claim that I have the absolute right to refuse the council entry to my flat until I have a proper assurance that their work will fulfil every requirement of safety and efficiency a reasonable person could expect of such work. I go further. I say that I will not be safe until every resident is safe, and it is the safety of every resident in the council's tower blocks which has been uppermost in my mind and those of my colleagues in this dispute from the very start. I repeat now a suggestion we've already made to the council, that the council employs an independent body such as BRE Global to carry out a full assessment of all aspects of fire safety in all of Stoke-on-Trent City Council's residential properties, and then to make recommendations based on their findings. We will undertake to abide by those recommendations on the understanding that the council does the same. Given all this, I invite the court to agree that the concerns I and my colleagues have raised are justified, that we have at all times presented a reasonable case in a reasonable manner, and that it is the council which is behaving unreasonably. There is an example of that unreason in their notice of application. It is stated that the council has, quote, attempted to gain entry to our properties over the past 6 years, but access has been refused, unquote. This is not true. From 2015 till the weeks immediately prior to the Grenfell Tower fire, and the council's action against us was no more than to send us fortnightly a letter asking us to make an appointment to have work done. Clearly no sense of emergency there. So why the urgency now? And what significance is there in the fact that the council's current fire safety officer, Mr. David Hilton, was formerly employed by Keir Stoke to supervise the final stages of the disputed door replacement programme? This is a conflict of interest which must raise questions of its own. I therefore respectfully urge this court to reject the council's application for warrants against myself and others on the grounds that it has not proved that we are in immediate danger from our current situation, it has not proved we are placing others in danger, and nor has it proved that the doors it wishes to impose on us are safer than what we now have, or even that they are safe at all. Thank you for hearing this submission signed. And that's what I sent the court.
The clerk of the court did most of the talking. The magistrates weren't sitting. It was the clerk of the court that was doing the talking. And she said, you shouldn't have brought this case here because there's history. There's a lot of history to this case. It goes back years. You can't just come demanding that we give you the right to carry on and do this work. You must look at it from a different point of view again. But she said she'd inform the magistrates of what was being said and they would come and sit. So the magistrates came and sat, and there was 3 of them. And the clerk of the court spelled it out for them, saying that they couldn't possibly bring this to a conclusion because they said to the clerk of the court said to the council, when do you want this work to begin? And they said immediately. We want the judgment now, and we will immediately carry on with the work. And little be known to us, while we were in the courtroom, there were council workers here, they were here, waiting for a phone call from the court to tell them they'd been given the right to carry on. How were they going to do it? You know, we were in court and they were sat on the stairs outside our flats waiting. So in the end, it didn't go their way anyway, because come the lunch period, the council brought in their solicitor. Their solicitor came during the lunch period, and he called us to one side and he said, could we have an informal word in one of the buildings in the building? And we said, yeah, okay. And he said, you've won more than you know. We can't continue with this proceeding without changing the structure of what we're going to apply for. So he said, if you'll agree, what we'll do, we'll bring BRE back, BRE Global, and they will look at your 4 front doors and give us a report, and to see if they do need replacing. And if it goes either way, if it goes your way, you keep your old doors. If it goes our way, you'll have to have new doors. And we said, okay, we'd agree to that. And we went back into the court and the magistrate said, we'll change the application to, you're going to have this report done, and whatever the outcome of the report, you'll agree to. And we said, yes, that's what we would do. So that's how we left the court. During the court proceedings, they brought up a document from a company called Faithful and Gould that we knew nothing about this. And apparently before the BRE report, they'd had a previous report from this company. And because we hadn't seen this report, the magistrate said, you must let them see it, you must read it now. And they gave us this report, and we found that the company had found that even though our doors were old and not up to modern standards, they were still fire doors. And the conclusion to their report was it wasn't of great priority that our doors be replaced. And the council had gone to the court saying it was a priority, they must be immediately replaced. So that was another reason that the case floundered.
As a consequence of the court case and our acceptance of the compromise measure which the council solicitor offered us, BRE were brought in to survey our 4 doors, and they recommended our doors should be replaced after all, which none of us were surprised by. And I certainly wasn't surprised in relation to my door. I was expecting it to be turned down. But they also tested one other door, notably not flat number 1 of this block, which is so conspicuously wrong from the moment you walk into the flat. And they found it faulty. They inspected one door and found it wrong, one of the council's fitted doors. And Randolph Conte, in public, in the press, said he saw no problem. He called that test a one-off. He's claiming somehow that BRE found the only door in all 10 blocks which had problems.
When they came, it was a proper door replacement company. It wasn't Kia, it wasn't the council. They'd employed a proper company to come and replace the doors. And we immediately saw that even though they were in the same style as the doors that had been fitted throughout the city, ours were of a far superior quality. It was a heavy wooden oak door, and the fittings they put on were a heavy construction, a heavy metal construction, far better than anything that was in the tower blocks already. And it took all day for each door to be done, and the people that were doing the fitting said they were a proper door replacement company. They were properly trained, and they had all the certification on the door to say that they were proper doors, proper fire doors. So we accepted them. There was nothing wrong with these doors. But we wondered if we had to have the doors that the rest of the block had got, why weren't we given the same quality? Why were we given a superior quality? It made us wonder, there's a big question mark there. If their doors that they'd already fitted were so good, why didn't we get the same?
But throughout all this, at no time have the council carried out all the legal checks they're supposed to make sure the doors are fine. After everything that's happened before and after the court case, and they're still just leaving it all alone, which is ridiculous. But something has happened which is likely to change all that.
Just after this, we had a bad tenant that was living at number 94 Southern Court, and he was a drug dealer and so forth and so forth. And some of his so-called friends had come to the flat while he was out and attempted to break in. They'd actually started to saw the front door in half, got so far, and then kicked the rest in. They kicked the bottom panel in so they could just crawl in under the door. We had a look at this door and found that it was just a cardboard, plywood type, either side of the fitting. Inside the door was this egg-shaped, egg box type material we were told about. And we thought, no way on earth will this retain fire or retard fire. And we took photographs. There's good photographs of what we found.
Right, well, we've tried to tell you the story of 7 years of extremely complicated dispute in about a few, what is in effect a few brief moments. And there are stories we haven't had time to tell you. I've listed the things we could have talked to you about. What happened when the council fitted our new bathroom windows as part of the replacement programme and didn't give us vents, so that now there are bathrooms suffering from mould and bad smells that didn't before because the council refused to give us windows with vents. There's the saga of the door chains, the lobby door chains that were removed and then returned all on the same day. There's a lovely story there. There's the asbestos that didn't need removing, but the council did remove at extreme expense. There are the top closers. Why any front door has got a top closer, I don't know. But there are top closers that sprung oil leaks. And then, of course, there's the condition of the building's main fire door, the red one at the bottom, which is supposed to protect the whole block. It's absolutely shoddy bad. We could have told those stories, but we didn't. But we do need to make special mention of the help that we never got from people. I mean, we got one fire officer to actually come in and look around the surrounds, around the doors before the BRE report, and banged on it. And basically he used the words, don't trust anything which sounds hollow. But the fire service itself wouldn't cooperate with us. We got a police officer came round and he pushed one of the doors and it actually moved on its hinges while he pushed it. A locked door moved on its hinges. And he says the only way to find out if these doors are secure is to give it the red key test, you know, the big rammer. That's the only way to test the door. But the police service itself wouldn't have anything to do with us. And a Geldwin representative actually came round and he said, he looked at the doors, examined, he said, we can't guarantee these doors. He said, I don't even know if some of them are ours, he said. But Geldwin itself wouldn't cooperate with us any further on that. And the MPs, first of all Tristram Hunt and then Gareth Snell, both accepted in the early stages what we were saying about our doors, and then right at the end said, no, we want nothing to do with this. As far as we're concerned, the council is behaving in the right. And then there was the council itself. We got no change at all from the council leader at the time, Mohammed Pervez, who saw nothing wrong in what was going on. Randolph Conte, who is our local councillor, who basically has from the very start backed the door replacement programme, refused to represent us in any way, and in fact has mainly totally ignored us, whatever we've said or written to him. And then there was the councillor who remains nameless, who actually sat where, on the chair now, right there where you're sitting now, who said to me, who said to us, these doors are crap, whoever fitted them should be shot. And when we talked about consultation, he said, if residents want doors with front doors with golden handles, they should be allowed to have them. He said those words, and then when we asked him to confirm he'd said those words, completely recanted and said he'd never said any such thing. So that's the kind of help we were getting. And the Ombudsman also turned down our complaint, and I think her judgment kind of sums up the whole attitude that every authority took towards us. On the matter of consultation, the Council has acknowledged its communications with the residents about the issue could have been better. However, the investigation by the Ombudsman could not establish that events would have developed differently if there had been a full consultation exercise at the outset. The Council has pointed out that they had to install doors with the required fire resistance, so some work had to be done. They asked the contractor to source an economic door which met the necessary requirements, and there is no reason to believe that a different door would have been chosen in response to consultation. What she's saying in that section is the council was going to ignore everything you're going to say. We can't do anything about that, which is ridiculous from an ombudsman. The complainants reported that they were broadly satisfied with the council's response to their complaint at stage 2 of the complaints procedure. The most significant point of complaint which was addressed at the time was the matter of door security, as at this point the insurer's assessment of the door had not been undertaken. The doors were fitted without an insurance assessment. The Ombudsman says that. This has now been done, somewhat too late. The council has satisfied itself that the doors are suitable in terms of both their fire resistance and safety. The council has satisfied itself, so that's all right with us then. It has had regard to relevant detail, including fire safety certification and specifications for the doors provided, the views of its insurer, the fire service and the police. Lies. The Ombudsman has believed the council's lies. Mr X and Mr Y do not accept the council's view that the doors are fit for purpose. That's the point, isn't it? That's the whole effing point. But the Ombudsman does not question the merits of a decision which has not been affected by administrative fault, even though people may disagree with that decision. We pointed out administrative fault by the ton. Insofar as the quality of the work done by the council's contractor is concerned, it is entirely appropriate that the contractor who carried out the original work puts right any works which fall below the standard the council requires. If individual tenants remain dissatisfied with work done at their home, After the supervised snagging process is complete, they can report outstanding issues to the council in the normal way. And what she's saying there is, well, all those blokes who did work badly, get them back in. Like getting kids to redo their homework, when in fact what they should do is throw the whole lot of them out and put in a new bunch who know what they're doing. Ombudsman ignores that. And then the Ombudsman tells us in the end that what's wrong with us just telling the council what we want done? This is ridiculous, when the whole thing has been about the council refusing to listen to us. And she ends with, for the reasons I have set out, I have not initiated an investigation into this complaint. And all of that, to me, sums up the whole problem we've had with all the authorities who should have concerned themselves primarily with fire safety and not with the interests of this bloody awful council. And that's pretty well what I've got to say on that.
The accountability was non-existent. We found nobody was responsible for the lack of communication we had with the council and the work done and the costings, etc. we never found out, in spite of Mr. Mayle, Christopher Mayle, who was one of our four. He continually wrote to the council asking under the Freedom of Information Act what was the costing for the work. We don't know whether this work was properly costed, because we never saw any documentation to that being. In the end, we wonder where the paperwork has gone, because whenever he's asked for paperwork, we never see any original paperwork that went back to the start of the project. All as we get is a summarization that this is a rough idea. So we still wonder if there was some shenanigans going on over the project in the first place as to why the council didn't employ a proper door replacement company. Because if they had, they would have had a 10-year guarantee. The door replacement companies give a 10-year guarantee on their work, and they also have an ongoing maintenance program to check the doors. The council here have no ongoing maintenance program, not that we can see, because there are doors throughout the blocks that are obviously badly fitted. Some have been vandalised by people trying to break in round the door locks. Some have been scratched and scarred with knives or whatever. And there's no attempt to repair them or replace them even.
See, to our mind, we said to the council a long time ago that we were scared that there would be such a tragedy in one of our tower blocks that, well, basically the council wouldn't be able to face themselves if they allowed it to happen. And we were lucky insofar as that particular tragedy didn't happen here, but it did happen. Everything we were predicting happened in Grenfell Tower, in Kensington, in West London. And so many things would indicate that what happened at Grenfell Tower had so many things wrong with it. Our speculation was, and still is, that fire would not have spread as it did in Grenfell Tower, in the way it did, as fast as it did, throughout the block as it did, if the doors had been right. That's still to be proven. But until it's disproven, it's a valid point, especially in the light of the fact that the police down there tested one of the Grenfell Tower doors, and it failed. Now, I remember we started filming on this subject a few weeks back, and I spoke about Grenfell Tower then. And I think how I feel about it, how we all feel, summed up much better in what I said then than what I'm saying now. So I'd like you to edit what I said then into this film so people can appreciate what all of this means to us. We have to tell this bloody council 2 words. The 2 words are these: Grenfell Tower! That could happen here because of you bastards. Every day I think about it. I remember the film of Grenfell Tower. I remember all those people, that shot of that bloke up against the window in his flat, and his black silhouette against the fire, which is right behind him. I think, you bastards, you're blaming us. You have set us up. We've been set up. All 10 blocks have been set up. Any one of them, any day, could become another bloody Grenfell Tower because you are so selfish and greedy and self-serving and self-absorbed and nasty people who deserve such a kick up the backside. Not very diplomatic language, but I don't feel like being diplomatic. Even as we were bringing this film, the making of this film, to an end, we came by a copy that was given to a neighbour of ours who's a leaseholder. And he has been informed, what we haven't been informed, that this council is now going to introduce a 4-year programme which involves, I'm going to go through this, putting up scaffolding all round the block and then doing these works: bathroom replacement, central heating, roof and eaves, soffits, fascias and gutters, door windows and canopies, electrical testing, structural and damp proofing, void clearance, environmental works, external decoration, energy efficiency works. Specialist works will involve asbestos surveying, asbestos removal, plastering and rendering, floor coverings, scaffolding, adaptations building works. They're going to tear these places apart over 4 years and expect us somehow to still live in them. They haven't asked us if we want this done. They haven't checked with us if we want this work done. Do we think any risk assessment has been done of any kind? Doubt it very much. Nobody's been round to survey these buildings. We know that for absolute certain because we've never seen them here. And yet they're planning to do all this work using contractors. This is the list of all the contractors they're going to use. This is the list of all the contractors they're going to use from up and down the country, one of them most prominently being Kia. And we tenants officially haven't heard about it yet. We've got this from a leaseholder. What are we supposed to do with a council like this? We thought the doors replacement programme was, bad enough. But now, basically, they're going to be ripping our lives apart. Why? One question they haven't bothered to ask us. What do you want to do while we're doing all this work? It's a complete nonsense, and we're certainly going to be taking them on about this.